We've come a long way since Martin Luther hammered his thesis, The Chapel Doors of Wittenberg, his efforts ultimately leading to the division of the Catholic Church and providing him with a mass following. This also gave him the ability to sell his work based off of the simple fact that he was acclaimed. In the 21st century, the commodification of fame and following has turned into an industry of itself, the industry of idols. Actors, politicians, and social media influencers make careers out of their fame, though the most notable following being K-pop idols, as their reach, influence, and power is unprecedented. Studying cases of nationalism and national consciousness, especially in icons as prevalent and influential as K-pop groups, we can aim to understand how their influence and power contributes to nationalism, and how that sense of imagined community creates a nation within itself, a nation that can transcend borders. Benedict Anderson defines nationalism not by politics or ideologies, but rather by imagined communities, specific cultural artifacts which have binding and mobilizing powers. These ultimately replace the Catholic regime, which provided order to a pre-Enlightened era. Its sentimental function provokes the perception that nationality is naturally occurring and inherent. However, due to nationalism's true lack of substance, when compared to other ideologies, its culture therefore must be forged. This gives nationality a fluidity which can be manufactured for a nation's gain. Speculations that K-pop is not innately Korean is inferred when comparisons are drawn on historical melodies and traditional practices. Shin and Kim recognize K-pop as one of Korea's cultural exports, and its random emergence and popularity has contributed immensely to the new crafted national youth identity. This identity relates to Anderson's idea of print capitalism. K-pop idols can be compared to vernacular, in which their evolution slowly erodes over time. As the capitalist tendencies for nationalism factor out minority idols, dominant idols serve as the common vernacular for the youth following. This leads to, as Anderson states, a new fixivity, which ultimately contributes to the fundamental understanding and conception of the nation, establishing cultural roots through antiquity and contemporary existence. Giving physicality to communities is paramount, and as Martin Luther gave physicality to his criticisms through print, K-pop derives its physical existence primarily through the use of social media. Media is an extension of capitalism. Anderson coins print media as appendages of the market. Media vehicles allow ideas to be identified and consumed. The consumption becomes a language of itself, connecting those who consume it and speak it, regardless of physical relationships or boundaries. This language serves to benefit national recognition, just as print language did, unifying those disconnected, exposing them to communities, and thus allowing them to physically construct identities through such medias. Consumers contribute to the spread of such media, as humans are biologically hardwired to communicate. Shin and Kim have observed that bilingual fans devote a vast amount of their time to translating every interview, song lyric, and newspaper article to share with others, while also creating fan fictions and dances. As nationalism continues to translate and unify, it also further evolves and solidifies a transnational consciousness. It's in its globalization process, reducing differences and furthering the decline of minority communities. Anderson determines that strengthened imagined communities result from a final factor of the fatality of human linguistic diversity. In order to solidify the eruption of an imagined community, characteristics of diversity suffer corrosion. In the figurative and literal sense, distinguishing features deteriorate and social constructs begin to limit nations and nationality. In the same sense that culture is fabricated, its popularization leads to the decomposition of its adversaries. Globalized consumption, which is often purposely facilitated, allows for an imagined community to become transnational, the ultimate benefactor being the nation's increased economic sphere and cultural power. However, there are negatives. Many paradoxes exist. To quote Anderson, the political power of nationalism versus their philosophical poverty and even incoherence. The potential of nationalism is plentiful, yet simultaneously barren. One's relation to an imagined identity can provoke action, but its intrinsic autonomous nature surges to its dominant competitors. That is not to say that the goal of nationalism should be mutual exclusivity, as nationalism's capacity of power is conditional on limitation and sovereignty. For nations, power lies in centralization. A certain ideal or utopia can be portrayed through media images such as K-pop. To again quote Anderson, in the history of nationalism, once there, they could become formal models to be imitated, and, where expedient, consciously exploited in a Machiavellian spirit. Therefore, it is essential as consumers, and especially as communicators, to recall Anderson's original definition of nationality: imagined community. The fictional societies portrayed through media, capitalism, and nationalism are mere narratives. Therefore, truth truly lies beyond the limitations of nationalism.